So, as I said, this session, just to reconfirm, and welcome guys, we're about to close the door. Just to reconfirm, it's on time of use, and we'll be discussing how can the time of use tariff and captive power work together to support growth of manufacturing. So we understand that industry is dealing with two key issues: high electricity costs and unreliable supply. And this can be addressed by time of use. Probably Brian will give us a bit more insight on how far the time of use tariff implementation has gone. I mean, is it running as expected? Is it not? But at least we'll discuss the opportunities offered by time of use and C&I. Can we use them together to deliver on the two issues of high cost of electricity and enhanced reliability? So I'll start with an open question, and you can take it in any order, preferably ladies first, I guess. Yeah. So from your perspective, as a regulator, as policy people, as the utility, and I may have to speak for the manufacturer here because Sylvester let us down. How significant are energy costs and reliability challenges for the manufacturing industry? In your opinion, you might not be in this sector, but you've interacted with them, and we'd like to understand perspectives, at least from you people. Let's start with Brian.
Yes, thank you. So electricity costs in Kenya are very significant, and that's why we have seen quite an adoption in captive power. Some figures that are being displayed in the previous session, where we have 600 or so megawatts compared to 3 gigawatts installed, which is almost fourfold compared to our regional neighbors. And not only is the cost of electricity very crucial, we also have reliability issues. So another reason that was highlighted, so in this case, it's a potential savings and can lighten the burden of high cost of electricity.
We'll have that conversation in detail. Any other perspective? Take one or two.
Maybe I can just speak to that briefly. So, of course, this conversation, we've had it in the morning about the cost and reliability being the major barriers to manufacturers in terms of their production. But I think we also have to look at it from a global perspective. And I like the theme for this year because we are trying to look at issues at a continental level and how it compares also with the global supply chain. So I think it is very important that we're not just able to provide affordable electricity, but of course, this was spoken to earlier in the morning, how reliable is it for manufacturers, especially for very sensitive products, but also how does it then translate in terms of global supply chains? How are we able to get competitive products in the market so that we can increasingly expand our manufacturing sector to grow our economy? So it's very important. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. But we'll throw it back to the audience because in the morning session, when George was talking about, it was Lorna talking about Ethiopia with cheap electricity and no availability. And I was talking to one of the promoters, it's called Bowen, the guy out there, and he was saying they buy electricity when it is cheap, and when it's cheap in Austria, it's 22 euro cents. So where are we in the scale of things? Are we cheap? Are we in the middle? Are we expensive? But we, of course, for our manufacturing sector, we talk about high cost of electricity. So we will come to that discussion. So now specifically going to my panelists. Oh, yeah, Fiona, you have a perspective?
Yeah, of course. Maybe just to add on to what Wilkister and Brian said, power is expensive in Kenya. In fact, if you compare Kenya to our neighboring countries, Uganda, Tanzania, even Ethiopia, power is expensive here, and especially more so for C&I customers. And of course, the reliability issues come in. We are trying from the utility side, we are trying to stabilize the grid. But the biggest challenge we are having is when we onboarded more renewables, grid scale renewables, the ones that don't have, they don't have batteries, they don't have any storage. So we have more harmonics in the grid. And these are, of course, contributing to this reliability issue. So we're going to see maybe in the future how time of use can be integrated with renewables and help more customers rely on the grid. Thank you.
Okay, we will have that conversation as well. I mean, the regulations and the laws allowed for the renewables to come. The question is, were we prepared for it when we did the regulations? And that's a different conversation. But that could explain why we're experiencing some of the problems we are. Because we opened the door before you were ready for, which is hopefully not the case with the net metering and the bulk tariff, electricity regulation. So while we are still at it, this one goes to, of course, I'd asked Brian how far we've gone, but I'll start with whoever is implementing the implementer of the time of use tariff, which Fiona at KPLC. And then Brian, you can join in. Could you briefly just explain if the objectives of the time of use tariff have been achieved, going by how they are structured, and you're looking at both industry and the e-mobility sector, because we hear some noises from various sectors. You could help us clarify, because we love to complain, but maybe you tell us as it is. Probably start with Fiona. Okay,
thank you, Bernard. For time of use, what we currently have is we have industries being charged. They have a different rate for peak periods, which is higher than off-peak periods. But there is a caveat, you have to have at least used your monthly, consumption to be able to benefit from this time of use. The lower prices for especially during off-peak periods. And then for e-mobility, we have a tariff for during the day. The charge is higher. I think 16 shillings plus tax and other billing aspects. And then for evening is 8 shillings. However, the challenge we have with e-mobility is there is an upper cap. 15,000 kilowatts. So for large customers, large power customers like industries, Basigo, Rome, who are charging buses, you will obviously get to the upper cap before the month is over. And when that happens, then there is the KVA charges they will apply, and you'll be charged like a large power customer based on your voltage levels. So those are the challenges that we have with the time of use. And I could say, if you're comparing us to other countries, we are still at teething stages if you're talking about time of use being implemented fully. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, before Brian continues, I had assumed that everyone understands what time of use tariff is. So Brian, just start with the definition.
Yes. So I'll define the time of use tariff. So it's a DSM technique. This is a demand side management technique that offers a pricing signal or economic incentive to influence consumer patterns in a more efficient way. So the way it's structured in Kenya, C&Is could potentially benefit from 50% discount from their peak rate. So the discount is 50% discount, but Fiona alluded that there are some caveats. So these caveats are two conditions. You must exceed your 6-month average consumption in your billing period grown by 6%. So your 6-month average grown by 6%. And over and above that, any additional units consumed in off-peak is what is charged at the 50%. So a common misconception is that all units consumed during off-peak are charged at the 50% discount. This is not the case. It is additional off-peak units. So these are units that are over and above your 6-month average grown at 6%. So that is how time of use works in Kenya. But that's only specific to C&I customers. E-mobility customers, on the other hand, don't have any restrictive conditions. All units consumed during off-peak are charged at the 50% rate, which is 8 shillings, as Fiona had mentioned.
Okay, so since I want us to be all aligned, breaking protocol here, is everyone clear about time of use tariff, or does anyone need a little more explanation so that we are all comfortable with this conversation? Anyone? So we can proceed? Okay. I see people nodding. Thank you. That's good. Brian, yes, you've defined that pretty well, but I'm not sure if between you and Fiona, you've also clarified on the misconceptions people have. Of course, you've talked about, it's not everything that's billed. Fiona, from the feedback you get, what would be the other misconceptions people have about this before we believe we have all these interesting project ideas for C&I using time of use tariff? Any other misconception, maybe? Wilkister seems to have one.
Because I see Dr. Mutua here, and this is a conversation he's also clarified quite well. I think for most consumers, the understanding has always been that ToU, for example, is there to benefit them, which is true on one hand, but really when you look at the history behind why time of use tariffs were introduced in Kenya, it was actually to be able to enable the utility recoup the revenue requirements, and that is also important because at the end of the day, if the utility is able to meet the revenue requirements, which then they split to all the other players, be it the generators, the transmission company. Of course, there are taxes and other levies here there that need to be collected as well. So if the utility is able to get that revenue, the assumption then, we are yet to see that come into reality, but the assumption then is that if you have more revenue, you could then spread that economies of scale to all the customers so that ultimately the cost of electricity reduces for all the customers. So from a regulator perspective also, there's a reason behind that. But I think it's always important just to clarify for the benefit of the C&I customers that yes, there could be opportunities, but really the original reasoning behind it perhaps was different. Thank you.
Lorna, you want to say something?
I agree with Wilkister totally. Engaging with these consumers, most of them view time of use tariff as a discount scheme, and so that's why they're more of pushing for more discounts and asking the regulator to remove the caps and this and that, because they think that it was meant for them to get power at a cheaper price.
Okay, so probably homework for Dr. Mutua is, yes, the revenue requirement for the utility is probably a regulatory standard that's used everywhere. But I'd say we don't care, we just want C&I. Can you modify your revenue system to allow more C&I? So you don't have to answer, so that's probably homework for you. I mean, how can you adjust that methodology, or is there alternative methodology that will allow more C&I to come into the system? Now I'm speaking as a C&I advocate, just like, kids says, I don't know, I don't care, but just give me more of this. So anyway.
Bernard, allow me to add something.
Yes.
On the misconceptions, of course. I think there is also a misconception that time of use, the rate is, it's an overall rate, but it's only on energy. because there are other things that come into your billing, warma, taxation, all those have to apply. That's why somebody would ask, why is it that you're telling me I'm being charged 8 shillings if I'm charging my vehicle at night, but yet if I look at my bill, it's higher. There are other things that go into billing other than the energy. So that charge is usually on the energy, not the overall charge. Just a clarification.
Okay, so in terms of uptake, I don't know what's been reported back to EPRA in terms of uptake, but my understanding, and I might be wrong, is that the uptake has extremely been limited. So my question is, what are the main reasons behind limited uptake of the time of use? You may have explained it, but I think it's important for the audience to also understand the level of uptake and the reasons for low uptake. Brian.
Yeah, so I think as I explained earlier, the benefit is on the 6-month average grown by 6%. So that 6% growth criteria is quite restrictive for C&I. So that threshold cuts off many C&Is. I believe also, since the discount is offered on consumption at a specific time, there is enabling infrastructure that is needed for this, and these are smart meters. So some of the customers are yet to have smart meters, and this mostly affects their small commercial 3 customers. But although a small portion of C&I customers also don't have the smart meters that are able to record consumption at a half-hourly or hourly rates. So those are the kind of limiting factors to benefit. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'll probably go. I had a question for the manufacturers, but Sylvester is not here, so I'll ask. Well,
maybe I can add on some of the reasons behind the low uptake. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so based on our research, it came.
Which research?
Okay, we are doing a research on time of use tariff, and we have engaged with consumers on different categories just to get their feedback on their experience with the time of use tariff, and also to understand why there's a low uptake, especially among the big consumers. So some of the reasons, of course, most of them are mentioning the structure, that they are required. One of the requirements of time of use, as he said, is that you have to increase your consumption every 6 months by a 6% factor. And to most of the consumers, they see this as impractical. Like, there's no way you can be increasing your consumption every 6 months by a 6% factor. So that is one of the major hindrances, because there's a lot of dynamics around the manufacturing space. Some are seasonal, some are continuous. Maybe 1 month or 2 months they're down, the next month they're up. So by the time the baseline average is being done, they cannot meet the requirement. The other reason that came up, other than the structure, is there's the administrative barrier. There's a lot of processes that is needed for you just to register and be part of the time of use tariff. Actually, some were mentioning that they have tried so many times to just reach the utility to be registered, but in vain. So they try, they feel like maybe the utility is not interested in getting us registered on this tariff. So there could be more that I can talk about, but I'd leave it at that.
Okay, so actually from what you're saying, I don't know if this conversation is moot, but the concept we're looking at is with a C&I. If, say, I put in my C&I system today, according to KPLC records, my consumptions go down. And if I'm trying to offtake power at peak to shave at night to shave your peak, then my overall consumption, even though the concept is works and I will help you shave the peak, my total consumption will not be growing and will not. So what's in it for the conversation then?
Please repeat the question.
So, from what has been explained, there's a 6% growth every 6 months. And there's the admin things are not quite the problem for me. For me, it's a 6 months. So, assuming I have a customer, Bamburi Cement, for example, I put in a 17 megawatt cylinder. Now, I want to utilize your time of use tariff to shave the peak for you. So I'll put an additional battery system, buy your power at night when you don't need it. Then I will now I will from my storage be able to supply my customer with power from 7 to 7. I'll have shaved your peak. But since I'm working with them and their billing to you, for example, is that they've been consuming 200 gigawatt hours a month. Yeah. But now because my system is giving them 100, your billing is down to 100. Do we still qualify?
You mean, do you qualify for time of use?
Yes.
I think the way time of use is structured is, have you met the initial conditions, the 6 months consumption? Then beyond that, if you've already met the initial conditions, then why not? You should qualify for time of use. Yeah.
Even if my consumption from you has gone down.
But I think the way it is structured is you first meet, then after that, you have to continuously meet that demand. If the consumption has gone down, then it means the rate does not apply if you don't meet the monthly consumption.
Fine, we'll continue the conversation, but so that we are not talking to ourselves. Is anyone concerned about this conversation as we are having it? Is there an opportunity or we are just talking? Anyone?
Thank you. I would just like to share an observation. A few weeks ago, I was at the EPRA event on energy efficiency. EPRA hosted this big event for industry to emphasize how important energy efficiency is. And it was celebrated. I think Isuzu saved many gigawatt hours. And I just find it interesting that we have a time of use tariff that incentivizes that you increase consumption. And I feel like these two are a bit counterindicative, or like they go really in different directions. So yeah, just as a comment.
Based on the recent EPRA statistics report, at least we're able to see that some C&Is have benefited from this time of use tariff. I think 971 million shillings in beneficence for that project. So my question is, I have a question in twofold. The first one is there a plan to expand the band of time of use past the C&Is, maybe to small commercial customers? Secondly, given that you've gotten the feedback on aspects of time of use and its impacts, do you think it's time to begin reviewing the time of use itself to be able to fit the market conditions that are existing at the moment?
Actually, the time of use was not to allow us to shift our consumption. Actually, and that's why the 6% was applied. So that if you are customer A and this is your consumption this month, for the last 6 months, this is your average consumption, you actually had to add 6%. But recently, I think in the cost of doing business, the 6%, there is some communication from EPRA that the 6% might be done away with. But it will not give the customer an opportunity to shift their consumption to consume the same at night. Because some years back, I think the time of use was applied, and actually we found that all customers had shifted their production at night. So it really affected KPLC. Not KPLC. Actually, let's talk about revenue for the sector. Let's remove the notion that everything will be affecting KPLC. No.
Yeah, so to the last question, the time of use discount of 50% is only applicable in the current billing month, and the next month you'll be subject to the same criteria. And if you fail to meet it, you will not benefit. So it's not fixed in for a certain period, say 3 months or 4 months or whatever number of months. I think there was also a question on whether the authority has plans to review the time of use tariff. As Engineer Naomi had mentioned, we have actually removed the 6% growth criteria, saying that it's not practical for businesses, and businesses' production cycles follow, they're demand driven. So we've actually removed it effective, I think, this April. And also, I think Hannah had a comment of how the time of use framework is counterintuitive. So the time of use framework had 2 objectives. The first one was to reduce curtailment. So that's why you're saying it's kind of geared towards increasing consumption, because we have a problem of curtailing power during the off-peak period. So I hope, yes, compared to another regulation, they might be working against each other, but this specific one is to encourage off-peak consumption, and as such, we would reduce our curtailment. And just to quote a few numbers from our biannual statistics report, and which was also mentioned in the earlier session, curtailment for the half year between July 2024-25 and December 2025, curtailment reduced by 52% compared to a similar period in 2024. So not all of it might have been attributed to the time of use, but the time of use certainly helped. Thanks.
Maybe just to add on to what Brian said for a minute, it's not just also off-peak consumption. Remember, our generation reserves are still growing. They are on the minimum. So if we have all customers at the peak, that's where peak shaving comes. That's when we have more power quality issues, interruption, low voltage. And that's why a lot of people complain, oh, we are having interruptions at peak. So time of use also came to ensure that we have grid stability, especially during peak periods, because for us, we still have peak periods as domestic peak. And if there is a lot of instability because you don't have enough to supply your customers, then it means you can't even have some of those few industrial loads running their load during peak. So if we shift people to the later time of the night, when the demand is low, it means peak, the grid will be stable for all customers.
Okay. Before I ask the next question, I was just talking to Brian. I think for the sake of this conversation, we need to be clear. There is the benefit of time of use, which we've been saying, to C&I customers. So where here C&I means commercial and industrial customers. And then there's the next level of commercial and industrial customers who have captive systems. So let's have that clarity when we are having the conversation. I could be a large customer, but I don't have my own system. So for the first part of the conversation that we've been having, time of use applies to me. Now, the second part that we are going into, that we are having the conversation, is I'm a large customer who has put in my own system. So I am Bamburi, I buy power from Kenya Power, but I've also put in my system. Now, how do we relate or interface with time of use at this level? And is it beneficial? So to Wilkister and Lorna, who have been involved with industry doing research, my question to you, or I'd like you to just explain further, what drives the decision of industries to invest in captive power? Is it cost saving? Is it reliability or operational control, or what else?
So I think just before I answer that, allow me to respond to what Hannah had asked, because it's also something that has come up in the conversations we're having with industry around advisory on electrification.
Can you hear at the back?
Processes. Sorry, so I think I'll try. Okay, is this better? So I was saying I just wanted to clarify a little bit based on the discussions we are having with industry on advisory of the industrial, advisory on electrification of industrial processes, and how we see time of use and energy efficiency. They're actually two sides of the same coin, but energy efficiency of course has to come first. So we have to exercise energy efficiency as the first fuel of the economy, and then in addition to that, so you are an industry, for example, you are energy efficient in your operations, but you're also shifting when you're doing your operations for reasons. It could be, as she has mentioned, shaving the peak load, which then means there might not be need for us as a country to invest in additional generation infrastructure and even system operations as well. Now back to the question that you asked, in terms of what drives industry, I think all issues, all the three issues you mentioned, and we spoke about this in the morning: cost, reliability, and operational control as well drive the industry. But for me, those are more from the internal side. So these are the typical things most companies will tell you. But also looking at it globally, and I like to use the current situation we are in, because even as Kenyans, it has exposed us to what the export market looks like. Some of these products that used to go to the Gulf region, for example, and now the industries, for example, agro-processing, have to find market here. And we learn from that there are always minimum standards that have to be met. And if you go to the EU region, as an example, they have this CBAM regulation, which requires you to meet certain carbon emission thresholds or reduction thresholds, and Ambassador Ali spoke about this earlier. So it's also one of the things we are seeing increasingly driving manufacturers, particularly those who are looking to not just serve our local domestic market, but also export some of their products as well. Thank you.
Okay, Lorna.
Also, to add to what she's mentioned, usually when you have low reliability with high prices, the customer is dissatisfied, and that is what leads them to look for alternatives. And when you have high reliability with poor price signals, then there's the underutilization of power. And that is what leads to curtailment of energy. So yes, all these factors have led have led to the C&I people reaching out to captive power. But I think reliability is the main major thing. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Back to Brian and Fiona. The manufacturers are not here, so I'll put you in the spotlight. Is it, and I mean, just be fair, don't say no, because it's not good for your business, but do you think it's possible to use time of use tariffs alongside captive systems, both legally, from a regulatory perspective and from a practical perspective?
Yes, it's possible. If C&I customers can take advantage of time of use to charge batteries, for instance, if they have batteries, that's a good way to blend time of use and captive. And if they have, they charge their batteries at night when the demand is low and we have surplus of geothermal energy. And then during the day, they can use solar if they've installed their solar. And in the evening, when the peak, we are having the usual domestic peak, they can use now the batteries they charge at night. So it's possible to blend time of use with captive power from C&I.
Brian, before I ask my question.
Yes, just to comment, I think earlier on in the conversation, you were alluding that once a C&I customer adopts solar, their consumption goes down, and as such, they don't benefit from the time of use. The immediate impact, yes, is they would benefit, but it's a 6-month moving average. So eventually, the threshold will get lower and lower and lower until such a point where they benefit. Some units are charged at that 50% discounted rate. So C&I customers should put captive solar, forgo the immediate time of use benefit, but should play the long game because they'll benefit 6 months later, for example. So, and just generally, I believe the cost of electricity from solar is still much cheaper than, or even close to 50% of what KPLC is. So it could be an equal trade-off for the first 6 months. So after 6 months, you'll have the whole cake. You'll have cheaper electricity from solar, which is almost 50% of what KPLC is offering, and you'll also benefit from the time of use discount on off-peak consumption once you've met the various thresholds that I mentioned earlier.
Okay, so that speaks to the complementarity of time of use and captive systems. But the conversation we've had is one of the driving factors is cost. So if I'm to complicate my system a little bit and put in storage so that I can take cheap power and put it, how does this work? I'm thinking loudly because I'm just saying, how does this work with my overall tariff, which I'm trying to offer to the industrial customer? Because my selling point, like right now, I'll do solar for you at maybe 7 cents. Some people are saying 6 cents, but let's say 7. Now, I want to upgrade my system. I don't have enough. I don't want to put in more charging capacity because I can buy from you. At nighttime, I will probably buy power from you at, since I'm consuming it, I'll probably buy it at 8 cents. So how much? 8 cents. And if I buy it at 8 cents, if I have to put in storage, my cost of storage is probably about another 6 cents per kilowatt hour. What am I doing? Does my question make sense? Does it make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. Yeah. So you just have to do a cost-benefit analysis, because you can indeed introduce batteries as a strategic load during off-peak and charge that battery using a 50% discount. So, and at the same time, you can also have solar during the day, buying power at, if it's 50% less than KPLC. But this benefit, obviously, you'll have to plan how to not call on really, but how to charge your batteries, because it's a 6-month average you're playing with. So in order to maximize the amount of units you're buying at a 50% discount rate, you'll need to do some forecasting in order to see how much units you can buy at the 50% discounted rate. But it's very, very possible you can introduce a battery during off-peak as a strategic load and charge that battery using 50% of what KPLC is offering, and also have a solar system to complement that whole system. So it will be quite complex, where you're supplied from KPLC, you have a solar system, and you also have a battery as a strategic load during the off-peak period.
Okay. So basically what I'm asking is if there are battery and equipment operators here, what I'm asking Brian is, can battery storage help industry take advantage of the time of use tariff by shifting, the energy use? And probably the resounding answer is, depends on the cost benefit analysis, you have to do it. But it's also important that we get the batteries at a very good price. I don't know whether battery prices are falling or they've fallen sufficiently to take advantage of the time of use. We might just ask Director Mutua to tweak the time of use tariff so that batteries become attractive. Okay. So just from the ongoing conversation, or from the foregoing conversation, I'll ask you, what would an optimized energy strategy look like for a manufacturer to combine grid power, time of use tariffs, and captive generation? What would an optimized energy strategy look like that combines all three: battery storage, grid power, time of use, and and captive generation? I see Fiona is itching to go.
Yeah, I can say something about that.
Yeah.
An optimized strategy would be maybe a scenario where the C&I customer uses grid power at night, maybe between midnight and 6 a.m. to charge the batteries. Then complement grid and solar during the day, depending, because sometimes you have those seasons where you have cloudy seasons and solar is not really there, so you balance the two, solar here and grid there. And then at peak, when power is very expensive, then you lean on your batteries, and then the cycles continue.
Okay, thank you. Any other?
Yeah, I think just to add to what Fiona has said, of course, we cannot give an abstract optimized strategy because, as he has mentioned, you have to run the numbers, you have to do the economic modeling of that and see what is the least cost for you. So this would be, I think, very plant specific. So what works, for example, for one manufacturer, based also on the capital injection that is coming in and the weighted average cost of the capital they are receiving for their infrastructure, it might tend to vary. So, but yes, I mean, overall, we can look at it in terms of the peak versus off-peak hours, but you really have to run the numbers based on your own system design and the financial injections that you're having coming in, as well as the cost of that capital for you to decide on that. Thank you.
Okay. Brian, you have something to say? Lorna?
I'll be leaning more on the ToU side. And I think maybe a strategy that perhaps would work is to, because for me, I still feel like the ToU, the current ToU also needs to be revised or something. There's need to look into it for it to fit in perfectly for the captive people and also to avoid contradicting with the energy efficiency side. And so I think the approach that would work is to have the C&I people at the center of the redesign or something like that, so that we work with it bottom up, not majorly looking at it from the utility interest and the regulator interest, but because at the end of the day, it's the consumer at the end of the question. So if we work with it from the consumer side and then we see what will work for them, for this particular kind of category of consumers, for this one, if we combine X, Y, and Z, what will work and how will it look like? Yeah, I think that approach should work.
Okay. Thank you for that. One of the things we were to look at, we don't have a manufacturer here, so we'll flip the question, was the challenges that limit ability to shift demand to off-peak. Lorna, you probably looked at that, but then I'd flip it around and also ask KPLC. Of course, we spoke about harmonics and all those things in the system. So given the direction we are moving, and now we want to do it right, we want to improve the system, enhance more C&I. How important are smart metering, data visibility, energy management systems in making time of use tariffs together with the captive power plants, including battery storage, more acceptable to you as a utility? Because right now we are pushing a lot of the responsibility for stability to you with our instability.
For smart metering, it is important for the customers to have visibility on their consumption. The smart meters will enable not just the utility, but also the customer to be able to know what sort of, to categorize at least the energy intensive loads and processes, so that they can be able to know when the time comes, which loads can be shifted to maybe the period where you were using time of use, and maybe which loads can be put on hold until such a time when they have solar, maybe during the day. So smart meters provide data. It gives you data, not just the customer, even the utility. And then data visibility makes you plan your processes, as I mentioned. It helps you, it enables you to identify inefficiencies in your system. If you have a lot of losses, maybe you've been running all systems at a go, so your power is, your bill is higher simply because you did not prioritize your processes. So it can help you prioritize, categorize inefficiencies and do away with them. And then EMS, energy management systems, especially if you have captive power and you have battery and you have grid, it helps you have all this in one platform where you can monitor and be able to do, load scheduling, even dispatch in terms of your generation, Same for the utility. EMS is is a tool that can help the utility to optimize dispatch of generation, especially during critical hours and in areas where stability is required. And when I mentioned harmonics, at night, what we are still struggling with is because of low demand, we have very high voltages. And with high voltages, without the necessary voltage control equipment, then it becomes challenging also for the time of use. But there are some projects that are oncoming. Some of them are already in the tunnel to improve voltage control. We are going to have probably from our sister company, KEPSA, they're working on introducing STATCOMs in the areas where we have geothermal and at the coast where we have more industries. So so far, that's what I can comment on how we can improve.
Okay, thank you. I see George is on my neck. Probably one last question to the regulator before I take a few questions. I had taken some earlier. It'd be what changes are needed to be made in the time of in the tariff design of the time of use to make it more practical and attractive for industrial users. Part one. And two, should we have policies that actually actively promote integration of time of use tariffs and C&I systems? Of course, I believe the policy exists, but how can we modify the tariffs design to accommodate more of the C&I systems?
Yeah, so thanks. I had mentioned that the authority has abolished the 6% growth criteria, and this is one step that really will help increase the number of beneficiaries. And I was doing a desktop analysis for the month of June 2025 last year, where the number of beneficiaries were about 1,300 customers who benefited. That amounted to about 100 million Kenya shillings in savings with the 6% growth criteria. But once you remove that criteria, the number of customers who would have benefited grew by 100%. So they more than doubled. They went to actually 102%. So they went to almost 2,800 customers. And this resulted in savings of 130 million. So about a 30% increase in the time of use savings. So we expect that after removing this 6% growth requirement, a lot more C&I customers will benefit and a lot more savings will be accrued.
Okay. So we can actually see that our regulator is responsive, as was said earlier. So thanks for that. And now I'll take 3 questions.
My question or observation is on something Fiona said on the optimization strategy. Introducing batteries to charge under the ToU. Maybe, I don't know whether you considered the power conversion inefficiencies, basically charging from the grid and also converting back to the load. Because the last time I checked, there could be inefficiencies of as high as 15%. Which probably could eat up all the benefits from the ToU. So I don't know, in terms of comparison, is it better to just utilize the power directly during the ToU period? And then in the case of captive C&I, just use the solar or any other source to charge the batteries?
I just like clarification, the ToU. One is the hours. What time of day or night is it applicable? And 2, on this increased demand at night. I think my sister was asking something very relevant, that if I already have proof that I have additional demand at night, do I need to maintain that additional demand throughout? And assuming even the 6% fell out. So how will you continue checking that whether my consumption meets the criteria every month? So will it be like you said, rolling average, would it be 6 months, last 6 months or the previous 6 months? I mean, the 6 months ago or the average of 6 months? How will it be applied that my demand at night actually now qualifies for ToU?
Okay, thank you.
Right. So on the hours that are classified as off-peak, this is on weekdays, this is from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. On Saturdays, this is from 2 p.m. to midnight. On Sundays and weekends, this is not weekend, Sundays and holidays, this is the full 24 hours. So the 6-month average is a rolling average. So your consumption in that current billing month is compared to your 6-month rolling average. So every month the assessment is done. Have you increased your off-peak consumption compared to your past 6-month average? If it's July, they look at January to June. So has your off-peak consumption increased compared to your January to June consumption? If yes, you benefit on those additional units. On August, it now moves from February to July, and the same conditions are assessed, and anything over and above is what is charged on the discounted tariff of 50%.
I suggest George is looking at me. In the interest of time, you can see him behind the tent and just get a bit more explanation. I'll ask one question on behalf of Ambassador. I see he's busy. You've spoken about savings and reductions, and how does this translate to in terms of greenhouse gas emissions? Because we are shaving the peak when we are using less thermals. We are taking in when we are venting less. Has anyone in the system quantified in terms of climate benefits, the benefits of time of use? I think that's important for him. Has that been quantified? Either by KPLC or the regulator? Well, I guess we need to, or he'll second someone to you to help you do that. But it's useful information, because then that leverages, some of the climate finance and things that could even extend to the C&I customers use that. Yes, Brian.
I think it might not really be on the reduced thermal dispatch, but on a month-to-month basis, we usually track increased off-peak sales, and these increased off-peak sales are obviously reducing geothermal venting. Yeah.
Okay, but at least we need to have the number somewhere. Thank you. Fiona, you wanted to say something?
I wanted to respond to what the gentleman had asked about charging batteries during off-peak. Unfortunately, where your systems are concerned, the utility cannot necessarily, you can have smart, inverters to ensure that the power that you're getting from the utility is stabilized before it gets to your battery, in case that will reduce inefficiencies. Other than that, it's your own prerogative to ensure that you have efficiencies on your side. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll give you 1 minute each. George is on my case. In terms of outlook for time of use tariffs and C&I customers incorporating, storage and captive systems, what's your outlook? I'll start. Lorna, 2 minutes max. How do you see us going?
I think for time of use and captive to really join together, there's need for some adjustments and some revisions so that they can perfectly work, at least qua ground, like not just theoretically. Yes.
Thank you. Wilkister.
I think my parting shot would be in relation to what somebody had asked about bans. I'm not sure we answered that question, but I think there's opportunity to actually redesign and have different bans, so we don't just have a 50% discount applying to everyone who qualifies within that threshold, but we can actually have various categories. Esak has been doing some work on that. Unfortunately, they didn't get a chance to present it, but it would be very interesting if the regulator is able to consider the opportunity to actually have different bands, and also think about the smaller customers, the SMEs, because some of these requirements, even in terms of voltages, to be able to meet certain thresholds, they cannot be at that level, but they could make opportunity of ToU, and they are one of the biggest drivers of our economy. So really there's opportunity there as well. Thank you.
Okay, Fiona.
I believe. Hello.
Thank you. From the conversations we've had here, it's clear that a lot of flexibility is required, both from the regulator and the utility end, where time of use is concerned. Maybe if we have better policies and more discussions and onboarding, the view of the C&I customers would be important to make this possible and feasible in future. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian?
Yeah, so I'd want to say the authority does receive proposals on various tariff structures. We really encourage that. The Esak team presented what the time of use structure would be like, and we'll still deliberate it as we currently review the KPLC tariff. I believe also CAM had sent their proposal as well. So I'd want to call on C&I customers and relevant stakeholders that proposals are welcome and we can deliberate and help improve this framework. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for that invitation. We can continue the conversation with EPRA and all that. Just two things that I'd like to say. One is clearly this time is not enough. So George, probably Penina should have one of those webinars or those sessions where we discuss time of use. That would give us an hour plus. Thank you. And I think I'd be doing a disservice. One of the exhibitors has explained to us a very interesting system that can actually integrate the conversation that we are having. Is it Baron or Baron? So Baron, when you see, we should have had them in here. They have a system that integrates that, buys cheap, stores, uses, and they are operating in a market where there's a day ahead. So if power is going to be more expensive day ahead, the system decides, do you hold it and use it yourself or sell it to some people? Pretty interesting stuff. So when you have time, please talk to them. Otherwise, thank you very much. You've been an engaging audience. I hope we can continue conversation. Our regulator is very flexible. Our utility is opening up. Should I say that? But thank you very much for the session, and have a good evening.